My relatives ignored my graduation deliberately. So without hesitation, I adopted a new identity and never returned, and that choice transformed everything. The day of my graduation was supposed to be the pinnacle of my life, a moment where all the sleepless nights, endless studying, and sacrifices would finally be recognized. I had imagined the pride in my family's eyes, the warm hugs, and the congratulations that would follow. I pictured laughter, tears of joy, and memories that would last a lifetime. But reality shattered those expectations immediately. I arrived at the ceremony early, excitement bubbling inside me, only to find the seats reserved for my relatives empty. At first, I told myself it was just bad timing. Maybe they were caught in traffic or held up by some unavoidable circumstance. But as the hours dragged on, and speeches ended without their arrival, it became painfully clear they weren't coming. My relatives had ignored my graduation deliberately. No apologies, no excuses, no acknowledgement of the years I had poured into reaching this milestone. I left the auditorium quietly, feeling the sharp sting of betrayal and disappointment. The city felt different that day, harsher somehow, as if it too understood my rejection. I walked aimlessly through streets buzzing with strangers' celebrations, wondering how the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally could turn their backs so easily. Every cheer and every family gathering I saw was like salt on a wound. That night, alone in my tiny apartment, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life forever. Without hesitation, I adopted a new identity. I changed my name, erased the ties to the past, and vowed never to return. Starting over was more difficult than I could have imagined. I arrived in a city where no one knew me, where I had to fight for every opportunity, and every ounce of respect. Every day was a test of perseverance, finding work that would pay the bills, making friends who didn't care about my history, and building a reputation from scratch. At first, loneliness became a constant companion. Nights were the hardest, filled with memories of what I had lost, and the gnawing question of whether I had made a mistake in leaving everything behind. Yet slowly, freedom began to emerge from the chaos. Without the shadow of my old family's expectations, I discovered parts of myself I had never known. I pursued passions I had buried, painting, writing, even traveling to places I had only dreamed about. Each small victory, each new friendship, and every experience I embraced became a reminder that life could be beautiful on my own terms. Years passed, and the person I had become was almost unrecognizable from the one who left home. I built a life full of meaning, adventure, and love, the kind of life I could never have imagined in the confines of my old family. I learned that the bonds we form through choice, loyalty, and shared experiences often matter more than those of blood. I had found my family, not in those who abandoned me, but in the people who stood by me, who celebrated my achievements as if they were their own. And yet, the memories of that day never faded completely. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I would recall the emptiness of the auditorium, the hollow seats, and the unspoken message of rejection. I understood then that leaving was not just a matter of survival. It was an act of courage, a declaration that I would define my own life, not let others dictate its worth. Now, looking back, I realized that my choice to vanish, to shed my old identity, was not just a reaction to pain, it was the key to unlocking my potential. My relatives' deliberate ignorance, which once felt like the cruelest betrayal, had inadvertently given me the greatest gift, the chance to discover who I truly was. That choice transformed everything. And while I may never reconcile with the past, I have embraced the future of my own making, one filled with freedom, resilience, and a life that, for the first time, feels truly mine. Years passed, and my life flourished in ways I had never imagined. I had friends who felt like family, a job that challenged and inspired me, and a sense of peace I had never known. Yet, deep down, there was still a quiet ache, a shadow of the past that refused to fade completely. I wondered sometimes what my relatives thought of me now. Did they even remember my graduation? Did they ever regret ignoring it, or had I simply become a ghost in their lives? One rainy afternoon, as I walked through a bustling market in the city I now called home, I felt an unexpected pang of recognition. A familiar voice called my old nickname, and before I could react, there they were, my cousin, standing in the middle of the crowd, eyes wide with shock. My heart thumped violently, torn between years of hurt and a curiosity I couldn't ignore. "Is it really you?" they asked, almost whispering. I studied them silently, the memories of my graduation day flashing vividly, the empty seats, the silence, the betrayal. And yet, something strange happened. I didn't feel the immediate anger I had expected. Instead, I felt a calm clarity. The person they had known was gone. The life I had built, the struggles I had overcome, and the choices I had made had all shaped someone stronger, wiser, and independent. "I'm not the person you think I am anymore," I said softly. "I've built a life without you, and it's the life I chose for myself." They looked down, ashamed. "We were wrong. We didn't know how much it meant to you. We never should have ignored you." I felt a surge of emotions, anger, hurt, pity, but I also felt something I hadn't expected, closure. I realized then that reconciliation wasn't about going back. It was about recognizing how far I had come. I didn't need their approval or their recognition anymore. I had survived, thrived, and created a life that no one could take from me. That encounter became a turning point. It didn't erase the past, and it didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me that my choices were mine alone. I could forgive without forgetting, move forward without returning, and continue to live fully in the life I had built. That day, I truly understood the power of self-determination, the courage it takes to walk away from those who abandon you, and the freedom that comes from embracing the life you choose. In the end, ignoring my graduation was the catalyst for everything I became. The betrayal that once seemed unbearable had sparked the journey that transformed me. I learned that family isn't always about blood, it's about those who show up, who support you, and who remind you that you are worthy. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the greatest acts of courage are the ones we take for ourselves, in silence, and without looking back. Weeks passed after the encounter with my cousin, but the memory lingered like a quiet storm. I couldn't stop thinking about the life I had left behind, and yet I knew I couldn't go back. One evening, as I walked along the riverbank, the city lights reflecting off the water, I received an unexpected message. A letter slipped under my apartment door. It was from my parents. The handwriting was familiar, but hesitant, almost trembling. "We were wrong. We ignored the most important day of your life. We've realized too late what we lost. We want to see you if you're willing." For a moment, I felt the old rush of hurt and betrayal, sharp and vivid. I remembered the empty seats, the deliberate neglect, and the years I had spent building a life without them. My first instinct was to ignore the letter, to continue living in the freedom I had carved out. But something in me hesitated. Was this an opportunity for closure, or just a trap to reopen old wounds? I thought about my life, the friends who had become my true family, the career I had worked tirelessly for, the independence I had fought to achieve. And yet, I also realized that closure doesn't always come from ignoring the past. Sometimes it comes from facing it, on your own terms. I decided to meet them, not to seek approval or rekindle old bonds, but to show them, and myself, how far I had come. When we finally sat across from each other in a small cafe, I saw the guilt in their eyes, the years of regret. But I also felt a calm certainty that I had never experienced before. "I'm not the same person you ignored," I said quietly. "I've lived my life without you, and I've become stronger, wiser, and happier because of it. I don't need your validation anymore." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We were blind. We didn't understand the pain we caused. We want to make amends, even if we can't undo the past." I nodded, a sense of peace washing over me. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, and it wasn't about returning to the life I had left behind. It was about releasing the burden of anger and embracing the strength I had gained. As I walked out of that cafe, the sun breaking through the clouds, I realized that the journey I had taken, the solitude, the struggles, the triumphs, had all been worth it. My life had been transformed not by their absence, but by my decision to choose myself. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The people who abandon us do not define our worth. Our choices do. The courage to walk away, to rebuild, and to embrace the unknown is the power that shapes who we truly are. From that day forward, I carried my past like a shadow behind me, not as a source of pain, but as a reminder of resilience. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. Days turned into weeks, and life continued its rhythm, steady and alive. Yet that meeting in the cafe had left a lingering sense of clarity within me, a quiet light that illuminated the path I had chosen. I began to understand that the emptiness I once felt was not a void to be filled by others, but a space for growth, for self-discovery, and for the life I had fought to create. One evening, I climbed to the rooftop of my apartment building, looking out over the city as it sparkled in the twilight. The wind carried a cool, cleansing energy, and I felt every memory, the pain, the rejection, the long nights of struggle, drift away with it. For the first time, I saw my past not as a cage, but as a foundation. Every betrayal, every moment of loneliness, had built the person I had become, strong, unshakable, and free. I whispered to the night sky, almost to myself, I am enough. I am whole. I am the life I chose. And in that whisper, I felt a shift, as if the universe itself had answered. The weight of old expectations and hurt fell away, leaving only the truth that had always been mine: my life belonged to me. In the distance, I saw a single bird soar high above the city, wings spread wide, moving effortlessly against the wind. I smiled, knowing that its freedom mirrored my own. Just like that bird, I had risen above the constraints of my past, embracing the unknown with courage and grace. My family's neglect had once seemed like the end of the world, but it had become the catalyst for everything I had achieved, everything I had discovered about myself. And so, I walked back inside, feeling the warmth of the room around me and the certainty in my heart. My past was a story, yes, but it was only one chapter. The rest of my life awaited, unwritten and full of possibilities. I was no longer defined by who had abandoned me, but by who I had chosen to become. As I looked in the mirror that night, I didn't just see my reflection. I saw resilience. I saw courage. I saw freedom. And finally, I understood that the greatest gift life could ever give was the power to choose myself. And in that choice, I had found everything. The city hummed softly beneath me, alive and infinite. And I, at last, felt infinite with it. Months passed, and life continued its rhythm, but I felt a subtle shift deep inside me, a quiet awakening that I had never experienced before. One night, under a sky thick with stars, I walked to the old hill on the edge of the city, the place where I had once come to cry in solitude after my graduation. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint echoes of the past, laughter I had never heard, apologies I had never received, and the hollow silence of abandonment. Yet something had changed. The air felt alive, as if the universe itself recognized my journey, the pain I had endured, and the courage I had discovered. I sat at the edge of the hill and closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, memories appeared like flickering lanterns: the empty auditorium, the long lonely nights, the decision to vanish and become someone new. But this time, they didn't bring sorrow. They shimmered like sparks of light, each one illuminating a part of me I had fought to find. And then I saw it, a luminous bird, glowing faintly as it soared across the night sky, weaving between the stars. Its wings were radiant, leaving trails of light, and for a moment, I felt as though it carried every fragment of my pain and fear away with it. I realized then that the bird was not just a vision, it was me, finally free. The freedom I had earned, the life I had chosen, the self I had created, all lifted into the infinite night. I opened my eyes and felt a profound serenity. I was untethered from the past, yet deeply rooted in it. The people who abandoned me no longer had power over my heart. My life, my choices, my identity, they were mine and mine alone. And in that clarity, I felt whole for the first time. As I descended the hill, the city stretched out beneath me, glittering like a sea of possibilities. I breathed deeply, savoring the crisp night air, and smiled. My past had forged me, my pain had strengthened me, and my courage had freed me. I understood now that life was not about waiting for others to recognize your worth. It was about claiming it yourself, fiercely and unapologetically. And somewhere in the vast night sky, the luminous bird continued to soar, reminding me that freedom is not given, it is claimed. I had claimed mine. From that night onward, every star I saw reminded me of my journey, a journey of loss, reinvention, courage, and finally, transcendence. The world was endless, and so was I. The city slept beneath a blanket of midnight, yet I felt more awake than ever before. Every step I took on the quiet streets echoed not with loneliness, but with the rhythm of my own heartbeat, a steady, unyielding pulse of life I had claimed for myself. I walked to the edge of a cliff overlooking the river, where the water reflected the moon like a silver mirror. For years I had carried the weight of betrayal, of empty seats and silent voices, of family that had turned away. I had thought that weight would crush me, but instead, it had become my wings. Every ache, every tear, every rejection had been transformed into strength, resilience, and light. I knelt at the edge and watched the river below, imagining my past flowing away like the current, carrying fragments of fear, doubt, and sorrow into the vast unknown. And then I looked up. The stars were countless, shimmering like shards of hope scattered across the infinite sky. Among them, I saw a constellation in the shape of a bird, its wings outstretched, soaring eternally. I felt a shiver of recognition. That bird was me, not as I had been, but as I had become, free, luminous, and unbound. I raised my arms toward the night, letting the wind embrace me, and whispered into the darkness, "I am no longer lost. I am not defined by those who abandoned me. I am everything I choose to be." The stars seemed to shimmer brighter in response, as if affirming the truth I had finally embraced. In that moment, I realized something profound. The world had not abandoned me, it had been waiting for me to claim it. Life was not a gift to be given by others, but a realm to be conquered by courage, by choice, and by the relentless pursuit of one's own truth. I felt my soul expand, stretching beyond the limits of fear, of hurt, of the past. And then I stepped back from the edge, grounded yet unbound, carrying the luminous bird within me. The city below sparkled with endless possibilities, each light a reminder that life is not measured by the recognition of others, but by the fire you nurture within yourself. From that night on, I became both witness and architect of my own destiny. Every dawn was a canvas, every choice a stroke of brilliance. I had turned abandonment into liberation, silence into song, and emptiness into a constellation of my own making. I was no longer a shadow of my past, I was the light that rose above it. And as the wind carried whispers of forgotten memories into the night, I smiled, knowing the truth that would forever guide me. The greatest power lies not in being seen by others, but in seeing yourself, and in daring to soar. Days turned into weeks, and life began to feel lighter, yet the past still lingered in quiet moments. I realized that even though I had built a new life, the scars of abandonment were woven into who I had become. But instead of pain, they now reminded me of my strength. Every challenge I faced, every lonely night, every leap into the unknown had led me here, standing on the edge of my own destiny. One morning, as the sun rose over the city, I walked to the river where I had once reflected on my past. The water flowed endlessly, indifferent yet persistent, carving its own path. I thought about the choices I had made, leaving, changing my identity, refusing to look back. Every decision had been an act of survival, but also an act of creation. I wasn't just escaping my past, I was shaping my future. A soft wind carried voices I didn't recognize, laughter and music from the streets below, reminding me that life was alive everywhere, waiting to be embraced. And in that moment, I understood the final truth: freedom isn't just about leaving, it's about choosing, every single day, who you will be, how you will love, and what you will create. I smiled, feeling the past dissolve into the present, not as a burden, but as a foundation. The luminous bird I had seen that night on the hill felt closer than ever, a symbol of my journey, soaring endlessly across the sky of my mind. I realized I could carry it within me, not as a fleeting vision, but as a permanent reminder: no one else defines me, only I can. And as I walked back into the city, the streets full of strangers who would never know my story, I felt a profound peace. My life was mine entirely. The shadows of neglect, betrayal, and pain no longer chased me. They had been transformed into wings, lifting me toward a horizon I had chosen myself. I was free. Truly, undeniably free. And I knew that from this point on, every sunrise, every challenge, every triumph would be mine to claim, and nothing, not even the ghosts of the past, could ever take that away. Weeks turned into months, and life began to feel richer, more vibrant. I started taking risks I would have never dared before, applying for jobs that challenged me, traveling to neighborhoods I had never explored, and even joining a local community of artists and writers. Each step into the unknown was terrifying, but exhilarating. I realized that freedom was not just about leaving the past behind, it was about creating something entirely new and fully alive. It was in one of those art gatherings that I met her, Clara. She had a laugh that seemed to light up the room and eyes that looked straight through the masks people wore. We started talking about life, failure, ambition, and slowly, over cups of coffee and long evening walks, a friendship blossomed. She didn't ask about my family, my old name, or my past. I could just be myself. And for the first time in years, I felt completely seen. Through Clara and the community, I discovered a new rhythm to life. I painted, wrote, and shared my work without fear of judgment. Every creation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had lost in the silence of abandonment. I began to see that the life I had built wasn't just a refuge. It was fertile ground for growth, connection, and even joy. One evening, after a gallery opening where one of my paintings was displayed, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The streets below were alive with lights and movement, and I felt the weight of all those years of struggle lift completely off my shoulders. I thought about my parents, my cousin, the empty seats in the auditorium, and the choices I had made to leave it all behind. And I smiled, not out of bitterness, but because I finally understood the truth. My life had always been mine to shape. The luminous bird, the vision from that night on the hill, had never left me. I felt it now not as a fleeting image but as a constant presence, a reminder that I was capable of rising above anything, of turning pain into power, abandonment into freedom. And as I looked out at the infinite horizon, I knew one thing with certainty: this life, my life, was only beginning. I turned from the balcony, ready to embrace the unknown, ready to love, to create, to soar. And for the first time, I realized that freedom was not a destination. It was a choice I could make every single day, in every decision, in every breath. Months turned into years, and the life I had painstakingly built began to bloom in ways I could never have imagined. My work gained recognition, not because I sought validation, but because it carried the honesty of my journey, the struggles, the solitude, the courage to choose myself. Each painting, each story, each conversation became a testament to the person I had become. One evening, as the sun set behind the city skyline, painting the streets in gold and rose, Clara and I stood together on the rooftop of my apartment. She laughed at something I said, and the sound felt like a melody I had long forgotten. In that moment, I understood something profound. I had created a family of choice, a life of my own making, and a heart that was no longer defined by those who had abandoned me. I thought of my parents, of the cousin I had met, of the empty seats that had once haunted me. The pain remained, but it was no longer a chain, it was the fire that had forged my wings. I had risen, not despite it, but because of it. As the night descended, the stars above sparkled with quiet brilliance. And then I saw it again, the luminous bird, soaring high in the sky, its wings glowing like threads of light. This time, I didn't whisper or reach for it. I simply smiled. It was a symbol, yes, but also a reflection. I was that bird. I had always been. I breathed in the cool night air, feeling every heartbeat, every choice, every moment of courage that had brought me here. I realized that freedom is not found in the absence of pain, nor in the approval of others. It is found in embracing yourself fully, daring to soar, and creating a life that belongs entirely to you. And so, I stepped forward into the night, carrying the light of that bird within me. I was unbroken, unstoppable, and alive. My past had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I was my own story now, and the horizon stretched endlessly before me, full of possibilities. I was free. And for the first time, I knew what it truly meant to soar.